Hey, friends, thank you so much for coming back to another episode of I'd Like to Unsubscribe. We are in the It's All My Fault episode, and why that is just absolutely not true. We are tackling a topic that's as fun as realizing you can't eat gluten anymore. You're welcome. Forgiving yourself after an autoimmune diagnosis. Ooh, ouch. Because let's be honest, when your doctor first said your immune system is attacking itself, your first thought was probably not something like, oh, cool, 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 cool. So if you're an overachiever, like a type A, I'll just push through it kind of a person like I am recovering from, I bet at some point you've also thought, did I do this to myself? Spoiler alert, no, you did not, but I get it. It feels that way. You whole life you worked hard, you pushed yourself, you did all the right things, and now you're being taken out by yourself. It can feel like a betrayal. So today we're diving into why this is not your fault, why blaming yourself isn't doing you any favors, and how forgiveness, yes, even for yourself, can actually help heal your body. And don't worry, as always, we'll keep it real, completely sarcastic, and absolutely free of toxic positivity. Are you experiencing symptoms of lupus or feeling alone on this journey? The Lupus Foundation of New England is here to help you. They're dedicated to supporting those living with lupus, offering education, resources, and a community to help you navigate the journey. From learning about symptoms and testing to upcoming events and research, the Lupus Foundation of New England has you covered. Visit lupusne.org and connect with others who truly understand. You don't have to do this alone. Visit lupusne.org. That's lupusne.org today. What if the life you planned vanished overnight? For Marissa and Britt, it was painful chronic conditions without cures. We lost everything: our health, independence, careers, and even our sense of self. But in the wreckage, we found something unexpected: a chance to rebuild. Welcome to I'd Like to Unsubscribe, the podcast for anyone feeling stuck, lost, traumatized, or just straight up over it. This isn't about surviving illness or trauma. It's about ditching the toxic beliefs holding you back and even daring to dream again. We're bringing real talk, hard-earned wisdom, lots of sarcasm, and practical tools to help you rise. You'll laugh, you'll cry, and you'll remember, even in the darkest moments, hope is still alive. Hey friends, welcome back to I'd Like to Unsubscribe, the podcast where we hit unsubscribe on guilt, shame, and the overwhelming urge to Google our symptoms at 2 a.m. We are your hosts, Marissa and Britt, and today we are talking about something that hits particularly close to home for a lot of women diagnosed with the autoimmune diseases and chronic conditions: forgiving yourself.
Oh my God, yes. Britt, I have been wanting to talk about this topic for so long because I can honestly say through Lupus Check, the thousands of men and women that I've interacted with over the years, I think, when we talk, we have all like mentioned how we have asked ourselves at one point, like, did I do this somehow?
Yeah.
Did I push my body too hard? Is it because, when I was younger or whatever, I did X, Y, Z? Fill in the details of whatever your brain defaults to. Because here's the thing, like when you're diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder, and we talk about this at length in episode 3, like you are told from go that your body's against you. Now,
Yeah.
by the way, we break down the reality of that statement in that episode, so definitely go back if you haven't. So, if a foundation is built after a diagnosis of the body is now the enemy, well, then how do you not like resent it, right? How do you not blame yourself for something that is completely out of your control? How do you stop feeling guilty for not being able to function the way that you used to? If you're struggling with any of these questions, I want you to know you are definitely not alone. This is, for most people that I talk to that have a chronic illness. And today, Britt and I want to dive into all of this and also the science, but most importantly, the how of self-forgiveness after you are diagnosed with something,
Yeah.
or even self-forgiveness like after maybe you've gone through a trauma. It was like no fault of your own, right? Uh, Britt and I have definitely been there. I've asked myself all the questions. I've poured all the blame on myself. I did I push myself? Like I would ask myself, did I push myself like way too hard when I was in nursing school? I would never sleep. I lived on like soda and vending machine food. Was it all of my like personal situations and trauma that I
Yeah.
had gone through? And I just start spiraling, right? But all of this led me to the same place, a lot of shame and a ton of blame. And this is all my fault. That's what I always came to.
Uh, yes. I mean, that's where we go, right? Okay. So let's just get something out of the way up front. If you have an autoimmune disease, there is a pretty dang good chance that you are not the kind of person who is just like chilling, living a stress free, kind of like beach vibe life before your diagnosis. Honestly, studies have shown that many women diagnosed with autoimmune disorders share the classic type A plus personality traits. They're your overachievers, your perfectionists, the ones who take care of everyone else first and push through pain like it's an Olympic sport. I mean, honestly, if they can have breakdancing, why not this? So, Dr. Gabor Mate is a physician specializing in the mind body connection. He is lovely. Go look him up. And he has researched the link between personality and chronic illness. Like, where is the two? Where do they come? And he found that people who are highly self critical, overly responsible, and have difficulty expressing their emotions are more likely to develop autoimmune conditions. And if you just feel like you got called out, like listen in, right? Because it's not because they caused it. Let's be really, really clear about that. It's not because we caused it, but it's because the constant stress, the overexertion, and the emotional suppression contributed to the body's complete dysregulation. Okay, so there's the difference between the two. So when you, someone who has spent your whole life doing all the right things, and I add myself in there too, right? That's who I am, the type A personality. I've done all the right things, right? I'm pushing harder. We're showing up no matter what. We suddenly get this diagnosis that forces us to stop, to rest, to ask for help. Did I just say the
Mm.
H word, right? Oh man, it feels like a betrayal. And if your body is betraying you, then how can you not hate it? And if you hate your body, then how can you not deep down blame yourself? Right? Do you see where the body goes? The one, two, three on that. So here's the thing though, and hear this really clearly. This was not your fault.
Right. You did not like you didn't work too hard and then you suddenly like earned an autoimmune disease and you
Yeah.
didn't stress too much and then well you deserve this. Like your body isn't punishing you. We talked about that a lot in that other episode. It's struggling. It's confused. It's trying. It's trying so hard and so are you. Like when you're diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, I know it's really common to question, did I do something that caused all of this? And yes, that self-blame can be particularly high in people that you might consider like these high achieving individuals, right? Who may feel like that maybe their relentless drive, never stopping, maybe it contributed to the whole condition of it all. But I think it's really crucial to understand that autoimmune diseases they're very complex and they're not caused by a personal action. Um, so before we actually get into what causes an autoimmune disease, we're just going to take a really quick break so that we can hear from our sponsors who make this possible, and then we are going to dig in. Be back in a second. Trying to figure out what's triggering your symptoms but can't put your finger on it? Try Folia, a health tracking app to help you connect the dots and get to the bottom of what's going on. Download Folia Health free in the App Store with invite code LupusChick. Folia is the one app to track it all. Learn more at foliahealth.com/lupuschick. That's FOLIA health.com/lupuschick. All right, so we're back and we're just about to dig into, right, what causes an autoimmune disease because it was not you, but autoimmune diseases arise, right, when there's this like complex interplay of genetic predisposition, right? And then you have an environmental exposure and something triggers this, right? People do not give themselves, like I didn't give myself lupus, okay? I didn't give myself allergies. Um, but it's like it's this result from this intricate biological process that is just it's beyond their control, okay? Now, the exact cause of autoimmune disease remains unknown, but research indicates a combination of these factors have to be present. And those factors are one, your genetics. Certain genes increase susceptibility to autoimmune diseases. And certain genes, like particularly those that are related to like T cell receptors and immunoglobulins, they can increase susceptibility to an autoimmune disease. However, if you possess those genes, it doesn't mean you are absolutely going to develop an autoimmune disease in your life. Okay. What do I mean by that? Well, then we take into account this other factor, your environment. Exposure to infections, toxins, either environmental elements can trigger an autoimmune disease. It's been linked to things like dark hair dyes, ultraviolet radiation, pesticides, even infection. Like there's been a huge uptick in autoimmune after COVID. I get a lot of messages from people that never had any health issues, but once they had COVID, they are getting diagnosed now
Yeah.
because it is triggering an autoimmune response. And then I think it's really important that you also know there's a hormonal influence, right? The higher prevalence of autoimmune disease in women definitely suggests that there is hormones that play a role. And I think one area where, if you've never really thought about it, and it's something I've written on extensively in the past, like a lot of women that have autoimmune disease get a massive spike in their symptoms days before they get their period.
Yes.
And you can do a deep dive on that and when you have time. And the hormonal component to that is it just makes such a clear picture of how hormones can trigger symptoms. When I hear about all of these factors that need to be present, I want to give you a personal picture so that you can kind of see how it all like plays together. Because when I think back and I wonder how or why did this happen to me, this is where I go. When I was literally born, I had allergies. Like I had allergies to my mom's like breast milk and like every formula that they had in the 70s, which let me tell you, there were not a lot. And then shortly after, I was diagnosed with asthma really young. Now, rheumatoid arthritis and asthma run really deep in my family. So, one, we already have this genetic predisposition in my family. And then growing up, because we didn't have the medications that we have for asthma now, when I tell you I got bronchitis and pneumonia every single year and lived in the hospital and basically lived on antibiotics for my entire childhood, do a deep dive into antibiotics when you take them that for that long and what it does to the immune system. And then I go to this camp, and the entire camp at 8 years old, there's a Coxsackie virus outbreak that puts me in the hospital. 8 years old, if you've ever heard my story, that is the time when my body has never been the same. Like I do feel like that was just that tip, right? That we talked about in the last episode. It just tipped me
Mm.
over.
Hmm.
Then in my 20s, I get this horrific vehicular event that I'm in. So here I am. I'm blaming myself because I had tried to do, like you said, Britt, I tried to do all the right things, right? But I didn't cause any of those things that I just mentioned. That just happened to me. That is the hand, the challenging hand that life dealt me. And I came into the world with genetics that I had no control over, okay?
Mm.
So let's talk about the stress. My childhood was extremely stress filled, just between always being sick and also like mine and my mom's housing and financial situations. So the stress was always there. But here's the thing about stress. While stress is considered a contributing factor and it could definitely be a trigger once you're diagnosed, it's not a direct cause, meaning the stress does not help it, but the stress didn't specifically cause it. Like it didn't
Yeah.
change your genetics or anything like that. So chronic stress can affect immune function and potentially exacerbate symptoms or trigger a flare-up if you're in a predisposed individual, right? But stress alone does not cause it. So the bottom line is, given all of these multifaceted causes, developing an autoimmune disease is not because we had some type of personal failing or our lifestyle choice. And I think recognizing that is vital, like for our emotional and mental well being. And it allows us to focus on how do we manage this effectively and how do we give ourselves self compassion rather than self blame.
Oh, girl, like as I do, as I'm listening to you talk and just give out these statistics, and it's just I'm realizing that I may not have fully processed that, especially in the beginning where I was so convinced that if I could have just been chiller, if I would have stopped pushing myself so hard that I could be better. And then every time I'd have a flare up, the amount of shame and guilt that I would layer on myself because I was causing the flare up. If I could just be okay, if I could just be fine. So it like it makes me choke up a bit because it's like, man, we didn't do this. But we're left to believe that we're the sole cause and we're then this sole, savior as well. There's so much pressure on that. And so it really kind of leads us to the hardest part, which is forgiveness. But before we get to that, we're going to hear a word from our amazing sponsors.
Ever wish you could be paid to share your chronic illness story? The Insiders, insights like things you know, matches you to paid interviews, focus groups, and surveys to share your experiences. Visit theinsiders.com to check out our current opportunities for lupus patients.
Are you experiencing symptoms of lupus or feeling alone on this journey? The Lupus Foundation of New England is here to help you. They're dedicated to supporting those living with lupus, offering education, resources, and a community to help you navigate the journey. From learning about symptoms and testing to upcoming events and research, the Lupus Foundation of New England has you covered. Visit lupusne.org and connect with others who truly understand. You don't have to do this alone. Visit lupusne.org. That's lupusne.org today. So let's get really brutally honest for a second. Let's imagine that you're speaking to a dear friend of yours, like your bestie, right? And they have been blaming themselves for having cancer or some other illness. You would probably sit them down, I would hope, as a good human and not a sociopath or narcissist, and say, hey, girl, like this is not your fault. So, why do we struggle to offer the same level of self compassion to ourselves when it comes to a chronic illness or an autoimmune, right? Is it because the autoimmune disease is defined as attacking the body? Because I feel like here it's the name is the root of the shame itself. I would never tell a friend with breast cancer that if she had just slowed down more, she could have prevented this. I would never secretly question her symptoms. I wouldn't wonder if she was making them up or complaining too much about them. I would never tell her that if she just went gluten free, she would be cured. I would never think that she was being lazy for taking so many naps. I would cry with her over her hair loss. And I would tell her that she was still beautiful. And yet, what do we do to ourselves? Do we do that? No, no. Instead, if we say, like, oh, if you could have just been freaking chill, this wouldn't have happened, right? Or you could have prevented that flare up if you would have just handled that situation better. The doctor comes in and says the blood work is all fine, right? So I must be fine then. And I'm just being way over dramatic. We obsess about our diets, right? We condemn ourselves for even glancing towards the bagels, right? Like, oh, how dare we? We get frustrated at ourselves for being so tired and we push ourselves beyond the brink over and over and over again. We cry about our hair loss, but then we tell ourselves we're losing our beauty.
Hmm.
Do you see the difference between the two? it's so easy to feel like you're locked in a battle with your own body. It's you versus you. And when something is your enemy, it feels impossible to forgive it, to not be angry, to not feel betrayed by it, to not wish things were different. But here's where everything begins to shift for us. I want you to hear this. You are not your chronic illness or your autoimmune disease. That is not your title anymore. That is not your definition. Your body is sick. It is struggling. It is confused. It is fighting. And it's doing its best to protect you, even if it's getting it very, very wrong right now. And the only way to kind of move forward is to stop treating yourself like someone who needs to be punished. I think about it in like in the Da Vinci Code where that guy had that like cat of nine tails and he's slapping himself on the back, right? I think that's what we internally do. Like we need to be punished for something we didn't do. But here's what self-forgiveness does not mean. It doesn't mean that you're giving up now, right? If I let myself off the hook, I'm just giving up. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that you are okay with being sick now. Like you have to like it. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean you have to like what's happening at all because nobody would. It's not fun and we get that, right? So you don't have to like it and feel like I this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. Like you can enjoy the effects that it has. I think that I'm a much better and different person having been diagnosed for sure. And I value that this really crappy thing happened to me, but this really beautiful thing came from it. That is the roses from the dumpster, right? But it doesn't mean that I have to like it now. What it does mean is that you stop wasting your energy now and you're not blaming yourself anymore. You get that back. You stop fighting with yourself. You stop treating your body like you need to control it and discipline it and resent it, and most importantly, you make space for healing, right? That's the mental and emotional and the physical components of that. So, I want to have some real talk because I really struggled with this for a long time. And I can genuinely say that I hated my body for many, many years post diagnosis. I felt really betrayed by her. She took away, so I thought, my ability to work. She was the one causing all of these horrible symptoms. She couldn't handle things, she couldn't get her act together. I felt like there was a war between my mind and my body. I I had the mind control, so I thought. But P.S., as we know from first episode, shutting down feelings in the mind does not mean that they get shut down in the body. Remember, the body keeps the score. So I thought I just needed to like grit through it, like white knuckle the crap out of this. So I sincerely would not take anxiety medication when my thyroid levels were so high, and I would have to sit in a dark room for days, y'all. I mean, I would go through these flares where my thyroid would dump all of its level into my system. Although I have Hashimoto's, which is low, it would treat it like Graves' disease, and I would shake and I couldn't see light. And I had to like hide, not just be in a dark room, but like had to like put my head into a pillow and just like tell myself over and over, you're going to be fine, you're going to be fine, you're going to be fine, as the most insane levels of panic would just wash over me and I would tremor. And I wouldn't take medicine to help myself because I literally was like, I can handle this. I've got it. I can handle this. And I would just sit there for days and then emerge and then it would happen again and go back in, but I could handle this. And I wouldn't tell my doctor how bad I actually felt because that seemed weak and I could handle it. When my brain or my body were screaming for help, I wouldn't admit it because I could handle it. Um, these are not examples of strength like I was trying to lead myself to believe they were. Like I thought this was just the epitome of someone who was like, yeah, they're just working through it. They're doing great. These were actually acts of self-hatred. And it wasn't until I went through a lot of therapy that I could finally recognize that. And I had to start to relearn how to trust myself, how to stop believing my body was bad and I needed to be stronger or punished. I had to start believing its SOS signs and not push it further, which was really hard for someone who's an A plus personality and overachiever. I had to stop hating myself and blaming myself for getting sick because I didn't cause it. And when I could start to do those things, even incrementally, it freed me in so many ways. But there's going to be so much more on that in later episodes.
Yeah, you just mentioned something and it reminded me of the episode before this. Um, and maybe it is part of that self-blame. Like I hear a lot. I mean, you and I talk about it openly, but even just other people that I've talked to, not taking the meds that could help or doing things that like could help us, right? Because we are in this mindset of like, I should be able to handle this. Like I
Yeah.
I got this, right?
Yes.
And we're doing ourselves like such a disservice. Like our body is struggling so much. Like why are we just fighting it even more to give ourselves a little bit of help in that situation, right?
Right.
But I think there's so many other emotions like come into play for that. When I was diagnosed, oh my gosh, I was so sick when I was diagnosed. This was over 20 years ago. You never heard the word lupus then, okay? There was no social media. There was not a lot about it. I saw my doctors, for 10 minutes. There was one book in the library on lupus, and it was like all medical. It was written by a doctor. I felt like it was for doctors. There was nothing there of like, hey, this is what real life's going to be for you every single
Mm.
day. And honestly, I didn't realize how serious it was because now that we do have social and technology, like you hear about it, like there's awareness, that like people do pass away from this and whatnot. And so I honestly just thought, I can deal with this. Like it's fine. And then I got the spiel about the main medicine that they use for lupus. And it's typically the first line medicine that's used. And it is a very toxic medication. It is just known to be a harsh medication. So I'm going back now, like 25 years ago. The pharmacist would literally pull you aside and say, like, hey, this medicine can cause blindness and X, Y, and Z, and like all this stuff. And honestly, I had been going to doctors for 15 years at that point, and I was just so over one medicine, doctors, and anything that had to do with healthcare. So I decided the absolute best thing for me to do for myself at this moment was to go into complete denial that I was just given a diagnosis and I ignored it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I am good. Like I have been told by my family members, I am like the master at ignoring a thing or a person. Okay. I was in nursing school full time. I was bartending at night late, in Florida, like bars were open late because it's the only job I could do because I had rotations all day long. And then I'd be out every weekend with my friends, and the lupus was just running rampant in my body because there was nothing like suppressing my immune system. All right. I was
Mm.
in my early 20s and I didn't want to live on all this medicine that they were trying to hand me because I think maybe somewhere the medicine cemented the diagnosis in my mind, right?
Mm.
That I had
Mhm.
this incurable, potentially fatal disease. And I was mad. We talked about that. Well, I completely ran my body into the ground. And I remember the exact moment I was in my nursing rotation and I couldn't breathe. And the way I described it wasn't like an asthma couldn't breathe. It was like you're trying to suck wind from a coffee stirrer, like that tiny little hole. Okay.
Mm.
And my heart was doing something wild. I had never felt it before. And I remember I walked up to my instructor and I said, I think something's wrong with my heart. I can't breathe. Thank God, like looking back now, I was in a hospital doing my rotation. They like literally threw me in a wheelchair and brought me downstairs. I was having a pulmonary embolism, and this is something that can happen from lupus. And specifically for me, lupus attacks my circulation and my blood. if you don't know like what a PE is, like people die from this. It is very bad. So I basically had a blood clot in my leg that had traveled up into like your heart and lung area. And it's so funny because we had just literally learned about this in school about a month earlier, and my body just completely shut down at that point. I was in and out of the hospital and bedbound at home for the next basically 3 years, and I lost my nursing career. And the guilt of all of that, I mean, my
Mm.
goodness, the guilt was on so many different levels. Like, did I make myself sick in the first place? And
Yeah.
then why did I refuse the medicine, just, why couldn't I just handle this like naturally or on my own? Like why did I refuse to take care of myself? So there was so much guilt and shame and anger there, and it took me many, many years until I got to that forgiveness. And me and you talked about that in episode 2 when I went to the, what my family calls the woo-woo retreat. Um, but that retreat literally changed my life because I thought I was holding on to so much trauma and crap just because I had to maybe forgive other people in my life. But that was a big nope. I actually needed to forgive myself.
Ooh, yeah. I mean, goodness, there's so much to unpack there, right? In that sense of that denial. My goodness, like you say, so many times you think, well, this isn't me. This isn't my life. I know I was there when I was first diagnosed. It was that sense of like freeing of understanding, like I knew something was wrong. And you're like, yes, okay, I get it. But then your brain's also going, no, not me. No, no, not me. And so, yeah, I mean, we do that to ourselves, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like we punish ourselves for having got it wrong. And then we're excited that we know that something's wrong. And then we're also not going to acknowledge it at all. So, yeah, I mean, this is parts of our story. And so we want to just be honest about this with you guys because we didn't handle this perfectly. So
No.
if
And
you
they're
could,
messy. It's all
yeah,
messy.
it's messy. So if we can do it differently and we can tell you about it and then hopefully you'll do it better than we did.
Yeah.
So, when we're looking into this and we're realizing, okay, we got to forgive ourselves. The question is, well, how do we? Like how does this actually occur? And I think the first thing we have to do is we really need to stop apologizing for being sick. And I think that's probably really easy to do specifically with our partners and our family and our children. But it's like, we didn't choose this. Like you don't owe anybody an apology for something that isn't your fault. Do you like, and maybe we do that as a society because when somebody loses something, we say, "Oh, I'm so sorry." But it's this sense of like, I didn't do this. And I don't need to apologize to you. Now, if I act like a jerk because of it, yeah, I do, but I don't have to apologize to you because I have Hashimoto's. Like, that's not how this works anymore. And we really need to start talking to ourselves like we would a friend. And we've talked about this before. We talked about this a few episodes ago about our body and the way that we look at it and we treat it. And I was like, if I talked to Marissa and said, "Oh, you're gross and you're silly," like, right? But we don't do that to ourselves. If your best friend is blaming herself for getting sick, what would you say? So whatever you would say to her, you need to say it to yourself. And you need to say that out loud. Like there's no more of this, right? And we got to find our way back to joy. And I know that can feel like a four-letter word, right? Like how could I possibly do this? Like we have so much going on now and I don't feel well and how can we really find joy again? Because your life probably looks way different now. And I mean, I know mine does. Mine doesn't look anything like I thought it was. I thought by now I would probably be trying to be a judge, maybe sitting on the bench. My life doesn't look like that right now. I am no judge, right? So it doesn't mean though that your life has lost value and that it's not still something that's so very beautiful. So it's so important to like seek out those small joys and engage with them because we need those small joys, those little moments that make you feel like you again. And truly, whether you need to do this in front of a mirror or you just like, right now, like give yourself a big hug and a cry if you're the kind of person who likes to do that. But you need to have a moment and you need to have like a forgiveness ceremony that you are physically telling yourself, I am sorry for hating you. And I think we discussed this a little bit more in episode 3, but you really need to do this. You need to have that mind body connection that's saying to yourself, hey, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I blamed you because this is not your fault. Y'all, like, maybe I need to hear this, but like, this was not your fault. You didn't deserve this. And you don't have to carry the guilt on top of everything else that you're already carrying. Your arms are completely full, right? So you don't have to carry this. You are worthy of love, of support, of taking up space and time exactly how you currently are.
Yeah, and I just want to say, like, if you are hearing that and it feels, maybe you never hear this, right? Maybe you don't have anyone in your life, like, speaking these things into you might seem just really uncomfortable and just, you don't even know how you feel about it right now. I just want to put a little reminder out there. When you are embarking on a journey of self-forgiveness, like, especially when it feels uncomfortable and so foreign to you, because it will. Just remember, like, give yourself grace and patience. And because this is a really intentional practice, like when you are ready to implement this into your life. And I'm not going to tell you that it's going to happen overnight and it's going to be like this quick thing for you, right? It took me
Yeah.
20 years. And I have tried every which way from Sunday to heal on some level, and you name it, the supplements, the breath work, the therapy, the diet, the food and everything, everything. And yes, all of those things have helped me in some way. And there's a reason why, like the ones that did work, they're part of like I call like my toolbox now, right? My
Yep.
arsenal. There's things that help me get through every single day. But by the time I got to the breathwork ceremony retreat, which was over 20 years after my diagnosis, I remember I kept thinking, okay, I just want to get to that next level of healing. I'm going to forgive people in my past because I was watching like some videos of other people that have gone through it, and like through the guiding that he did and the breath work, and I mean this was hours. I talk about it in episode 2. There was no one. Okay. I had worked so hard to forgive so much. And it came up that the reason why I was stuck, it wasn't that I necessarily had to forgive someone else, because I had really worked through like a lot of forgiveness of people that were, in my past growing up and whatnot, just some dysfunction that had been there. But I realized, and it was only in that breathwork ceremony, like I was stuck because I had not yet forgiven myself. It wasn't even a thought in my mind. Like, I don't
Yeah.
even think I ever even contemplated it until that moment. I thought for sure I was kind of stuck in this like healing just level of it wasn't moving, right? I wasn't like growing for a while. And it was so heavy because, like, I had never even considered maybe it's not someone else that I need to forgive at this point. Maybe it's myself. And, like, I'm so grateful that it was even brought into my life. And I share that because if you, like me, have tried so much, so many things, you still feel disconnected. You feel like you're just kind of stuck or angry or this shame, and you feel like it has to be your fault in some way. I want to encourage you to make this an area of your life that you get really intentional about doing the work in, because self-forgiveness isn't about ignoring or suppressing negative feelings, but it's about actually cultivating an environment where your emotional well-being can prosper. Like, think of like a garden. Forgiveness is so powerful when we offer it to one another, right? Imagine like in times in your life where you and a loved one or a friend, you guys forgave each other and your relationship was so much stronger moving forward. Imagine the power that we have when we offer forgiveness to ourselves.
Preach. Yep.
So, that is our thoughts on self-forgiveness, guys. It's not an easy journey and it's definitely not an easy path. And this might be just sort of the first time that it's even been brought up or just shared with you, or that you've really even taken some time to think about it. But, consider that. Consider that to be an area that you really get intentional and work on, because I think it's really important for anyone that has dealt with a chronic illness or some type of trauma. So, if this episode has resonated with you, share it with someone that you love, that someone needs to hear it. And Britt and I would love for you to follow us at I'd Like to Unsubscribe on Instagram. And also let us know how you are feeling about your body, about the things that we talk about. If there is a topic that you would like to unsubscribe from, please send us a message. Like, we love getting messages from people, and let's just talk about it in a future episode. So until next time, forgive yourself. Work on that. Give yourself grace and love that you deserve, and thank your body for all that it is doing. Because let me tell you, that chick or dude is pretty awesome. We love you, tribe. We'll see you next time.
Love you, tribe. Bye.